Hello friends, welcome back to another episode. So I got my second roll of Ektachrome and I wanted to give it a retry, right? Because in the first roll, I said it behaves like ISO 200 in my estimation. It was overexposing by a stop. I bought a second roll, took it out, shot it -1 EV. I treated it as ISO 200 film and the results are spectacular. So we'll talk in detail about the difference here. Okay, so if exposing at box speed, to me, if you're exposing at box speed, in reality, you're exposing at +1 EV, right? You're overexposing the film by a stop. And what I found is that in post-production, it's very difficult to recover anything in post-production. So let's talk about like a JPEG RAW versus JPEG when you're shooting digitally. If you've ever opened an image in like something like Lightroom and you're trying to correct in post-production your color temperature and stuff, it's very easy in RAW and it's very limited in JPEG. JPEG, it's fruitless to try to recover it because the data just isn't there. And it reminds me, it's very analogous to Ektachrome. If you overexpose, if you shoot it at box speed and you overexpose, it's very difficult to get anything back. So what I found is that all my images kind of turned a bluish cast, right? So if you're in Lightroom, if you're trying to adjust temperature, if you drag your slider left, it'll go blue, and if you drag it too much to the right, it'll go orange. But if you expose a film properly, an actual film, there's a middle ground, there's a sweet spot in the middle, and the same in RAW. But overexposing Ektachrome, it's hard to recover. There's almost no middle spot. When you take your slider from blue, you're in blue and you're going and going, and then it just craps out to orange. So what I'm trying to get at, when you're trying to correct your color temperature in post-production, it's not there, it's not available because you've overexposed the film, you've blown it out, and it's analogous to a JPEG in digital. You just can't correct it. So let's talk about where I did that. So again, I talked about this bluish cast. If you've been on Flickr for a while, you can almost tell a Canon. It's really kind of cool. You can almost tell a Canon image because when you're going through the images, you'll see some that are slightly shifted blue. And every time you see an image shifted blue, almost by default, it will always be an image shot with a Canon DSLR, right? Because that's what Canons did. They shifted to the blue, which is in Kelvin. A proper daylight is about 5,500 Kelvin. But Canons, they always leaned a little bit blue to about 6,500 Kelvin or 7,000 Kelvin. So you could always tell a Canon image at Flickr. And it's the same with this Ektachrome. If you overexpose it, it's going to be predominantly blue across the spectrum. So, again, what I'm trying to get at, it's analogous to when you're on Flickr, you see a Canon image, it has that same type of mental connection. There's a Canon image, it's 6,500 Kelvin. Ektachrome behaves the same way. Okay, so let's talk about the colors. The colors are very flat if you overexpose it, right? If you're shooting at ISO 100 as the box speed, you overexpose the film, and the resulting colors are flat. Again, because you've overexposed the film, and in post, it's hard to get that color back. It's really difficult. Okay, and it reminds me of Portra. So the reason people shoot Portra, of course, is you want muted colors and you want the skin tone. That's why it's called Portra, right? It's portrait. It's a summation of portrait, and you don't want wild, vivid colors. Like on the extreme side would be like a Fuji Velvia, right? That's way cartoonish saturation and stuff, right? So my point is when you shoot it at box speed, it's going to come out, the colors are going to be muted when you try to recover them in post, and it'll look very much like a Portra, which isn't a bad thing, but just understand you're going to basically get a positive, you're getting a positive film version of Portra if you shoot Ektachrome at box speed. Now, to me, if your results are different, they're different. I'm just telling you what happened to me. So I got my first roll from a film photography project, and I got the second one from B&H. So they were two different lot numbers, but and I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I got two different lot numbers on the film box because it shows that my hypothesis was actually correct, that the film is indeed exposing hot by one stop. So let's talk about, I know I kind of went long. I'm trying to keep this as brief as possible. So now what I did on my second roll is I went downtown El Paso and I placed my camera. I have a Nikon F3, and I placed a little wheel on 200, and I also had my Sekonic light meter. But my film exposure dial, I turned it to 200 instead of 100 because I wanted to film, either if I was doing it by my Sekonic or I was trusting internal meter of the camera, I wanted the film to underexpose by 1 stop, and which that means is I'm treating it as ISO 200. So you'll see the images, but it's very easy. So it was the contrary to my experience at shooting it at box speed. It was very easy to recover in post. So I scanned my images, and as I was dragging my slider left and right, my temperature slider in Lightroom, that middle spot that I was talking about, where it's neither blue nor orange, it was neither on either extreme of the spectrum, I was able to get that sweet spot in the middle where the film was properly daylight balanced at about 5500, okay? And again, that's it shooting, to me, at -1 EV or ISO 200. The highlights, so it's very easy to recover the highlights. When I shot it, so this is kind of complicated, but let's say you shoot at box speed and you overexposed by a half stop. In reality, that's 1.5 stops, and it's very difficult to recover a stop and a half with Ektachrome. Now you underexpose by 1 stop, and in your image you overexposed by a half stop. The net effect is a half stop, right? So instead of 1.5 stops overexposed, it's a half stop overexposed, and then you have the film has that much exposure latitude where you can recover it. Okay, so if you shoot at 200 and you overexpose, it's much easier to recover the image. You didn't blow it out. Colors are awesome. This is another thing that's crazy. If you look at this new Ektachrome, the colors are magnificent. It's absolutely, I mean, it's really overwhelming to me. I was so shocked at how beautiful these colors are. So in this one folder, you'll see a brown. It's a building, the brick. It's a brown brick. You'll see, I didn't think Ektachrome was capable of this, but you'll see a dress shop. I shot a dress shop, a mannequin. It's like in a kind of like a quince dress or like a bridal dress. And to either side of this mannequin is more mannequins, but they're in red. So this white dress is flanked by 2 red dresses. And please look at that one image, and you're just going to be in disbelief at how beautiful Ektachrome was able to interpret that, how wonderful it was able to interpret that red. It's just wow. It's almost really like Kodachrome. To me, this new Ektachrome has got a lot of the qualities of Kodachrome. Blue, we know the sky, and you'll see an image where there's kind of hard to make it out, but there's a train passing underneath the road. I'm standing on the road and I'm shooting down on a train going by. All the boxcars are green, and it did a great job of interpreting the green. Again, it's very reminiscent of Kodachrome. To me, and after doing this, it's really, Ektachrome is almost like an E6 version of Kodachrome. Instead of Kodachrome was K14, of course, right? And Ektachrome is E6. But in a poor man's land, right, a poor man's workaround, you really basically have an E6 version of Kodachrome, because the old Ektachrome couldn't interpret the reds and the browns and the greens as it can now. So they've done a marvelous job at almost replicating Kodachrome. The price, so this is one of the bad things. The price at $12.99. eBay is scalping right now. I don't know why people are doing this. They're selling it at $19.99 per roll when you can get it for $12.99. Now, when it first came out, it was hard to get. I can kind of see scalpers getting $20 a roll. But now the demand has kind of flattened out a little bit. So it's available for $12.99 at Film Photography Project, Adorama, B&H. But my point is, I think it's overpriced. So Fuji has responded with the price war. They've kind of cut their prices on all their films to compete with Kodak. And I think they're trying to really deal a death blow to Kodak, because Kodak is so financially strapped. Fuji has cut all their film prices, and they're basically trying to put Kodak. They're trying to just deal that death blow to Kodak. So, you're looking at Provia for $5.99 a roll, $6.99 a roll, whereas Ektachrome is $12.99 a roll. It's basically, you're almost at a point where it's 2 rolls of Provia to 1 roll of Ektachrome. So, it doesn't bode well for Ektachrome. So my overall recommendations are, again, it's up to you, of course. You're gonna own the film, but I would get 2 rolls if you want to play it safe. You get 2 rolls of Ektachrome. If you just want to shoot it, right, shoot one at box speed, ISO 100, and shoot your second one at ISO 200, and you can gauge the distance. You can gauge the results for yourself. And I do want to give a shout out, and I think these images are beautiful. Michael Strickland, photographer named Michael Strickland, he's got an article at F-Stoppers where he went to the Arctic and shot all kinds of icebergs in the ocean. But in a way, now here's the deal with that. I read the article. Now, do you remember Ektachrome? Its favorite color is blue. Ektachrome, above all other colors, loves blue. So he's in the Arctic Ocean, and the ice, it's not a pure white. Icebergs really have a bluish tint. So he's photographing a blue ocean in these icebergs that are white with a bluish tint. So it's, right, he shot Ektachrome in its under most favorable conditions. And secondly, it was professionally drum scanned. His images were professionally drum scanned. Where me, I'm at home, and I'm just doing it at my kitchen sink with the Patterson 2-reel tank, okay? So, and I have an Epson V600 flatbed scanner, so I can't get the results of a pro lab, but my images, I'm still happy with my images, but I can't get the results of what a professional lab and a professional scanner could offer. So, but again, I just enjoy doing my stuff at home. So I think that's about it. I highly recommend it. I get back to the two people who revived it, which is Diane Carol Jacoby, who was the lead, and Fred, I don't know if it's Kit or Ken, like Kitkin. I'm not sure of the pronunciation, but it's Fred Kinhoff. But they did a marvelous job, Fred and Diana Carol Jacoby. They just did an excellent job at Kodak. Because, Kodak, I'm just going to veer a little bit here. Kodak has been on a string of some really bad luck. Again, from my previous videos, I'm not a fan of Jeff Clark, their CEO. I think he's dragging that company into the ground, just as Eddie Lampert did with Sears and Kmart. So I'm just looking for these single points of light coming out of Kodak, and there are basically very few. I mean, Kodak is just a train wreck. But you have these two bright spots, Diane Carol Jacoby and Fred Kinhoff. They brought Ektachrome back. I think they missed the ISO speed. I think the film is truly an ISO 200, not a 100. But again, I'm not concerned with that because I know I'm shooting at ISO 200. I'm underexposing by one stop, and I'm getting fantastic results. So even though the film, I think, is misrated as far as its ISO speed, it's delivering wonderful results if you underexpose it by one stop. And again, you'll see below, I can't roll the images in this video because I'm using Video Shop, and it's creating all kinds of compression artifacts, and it's destroying my photos. So I have them posted at Flickr, and below in the comment section, if you'll please just follow the link, and you'll get the real good full resolution shots, and you'll see the difference between shooting it at ISO 100 and ISO 200, and you're not going to get all those compression artifacts.